Just like I did with Greg, we were counting the 3, 2, 1 down on Wayne's World, and that's Greg Smith over on our Funny Book Forensics podcast, which Paul is nicely wearing the t-shirt for, or the sweatshirt hoodie for. He got a deluxe hoodie. Should make those available for sale. Maybe someday we'll have merch for this podcast, which is Abs at 50. Welcome back, friends. We are on to another episode, and we're going to give you a little update today. I'll also give you the famous video body update soon. So, probably this weekend, I'll record that for you too. We saw a lot of people looking at that on YouTube. I didn't know I was so sexy, Paul.
Well, I don't know that 44 counts as a lot of people, but it's not zero.
It's not zero. Clearly, people just wanted to check out this body. That's why. No,
It
in
is
all
noticeable. It
seriousness,
was noticeable
it is a noticeable
for
change.
sure.
And I do appreciate, I'm just say, I appreciate you checking it out, not looking at my body per se, but just checking out the update and the progress. We're not doing it to show off. We're simply doing it to show progress, right? We want to show people that when you make a change, you make the commitment, things change.
Yeah.
And also saw, I give more props to this guy, but I saw Nick Legs do an update. He had a little minor surgery and only gets to use one of his prosthetics. And if you don't follow this guy, I should get the links in here somewhere to follow Nick because he's an absolute inspiration. Other thing too is this is how much of an absolute inspiration this guy is. So I did the workout with you today. I thought I did pretty well on my workout until the very very end when I was tweaking my knee a little bit. And Nick is already back in the gym doing CrossFit exercises in a wheelchair with one prosthetic leg. Because whenever I have a good workout, I have to immediately get on and see that there are no excuses at all to getting in the gym and doing something.
Yeah.
So that's that's why it's inspiring. You just see, hey, back at it. Here I'm he's tossing a medicine ball up on a wall. There you go. So you get thrown around by any inspiring people lately?
Thrown around by any
Yeah, that was
inspired
a joke.
people.
Yeah.
No, I did get hip tossed by one of my students today. That was pretty good. He finally is learning to drop his weight. No, I mean, I got beat up by Kai O, which I'll be doing again this next week.
Yeah, I've just I don't see a lot of your students. One of your students that really impresses me, and we talk about commitment to a goal. Matthew just impresses me every time he shows up. I don't know if he's even getting good at jujitsu, but the fact that he started with you and then started doing wrestling and it does that and comes back and forth and has literally just stuck to the training. Matthew's what, 16?
Yeah, he's going to be 16. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just so he's not even 16, just coming into the gym, wanted to learn something and try it out and did the commitment to it and kept learning. It's just so neat to see
Yeah.
him.
No, his wrestling
And
has gotten a lot better. Even in like just 2 months, like it is. Because, well, I'm sure I know his wrestling coach pretty well, so I know that they're training really hard. So, but it's already paying
one
off.
wasn't originally to come to the gym, wasn't he then walking and then riding his bike and
Still
then
does sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then I think his grandfather started giving him a ride sometimes. But talk about just everybody, "Oh, I can't get there. I need this." I was hearing the news about the toll charges in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And it's like $9. They actually did a funny bit on the Daily Show. They were like, "I just don't know any other way I could walk. I could go 10 blocks in Manhattan. Legs, the subway, but it's not that hard to walk 10 blocks. It shouldn't be for folks. That
Yeah.
should be a nice little exercise. I know it's cold and I know there are other factors, but
Yeah. I'll never
and I don't
forget.
think I'd want to pay a $9 toll either, but
Yeah. I'll never
you walk it.
forget. I think this happened when I was in Tulsa. It was like, and you know how how people in Oklahoma are. Yeah. But he's like the guy from New York. He's like, how many blocks away is it? 10 blocks? Come on. Tell New Yorker it's 10 blocks. They'll laugh at you. And it's like, no one in Oklahoma. I was like, this restaurant's 10 blocks away. They're not walking. So it's
You
definitely a cultural thing.
Do you remember the year in Oklahoma my car was broken and I rode my bike all around Lawton in the 100-degree weather?
Yes, it's terrible. It's terrible heat.
Yeah, I had a car friends that had electrical problems and the mechanic just gave me back the car.
Yeah.
It didn't even charge me. It's just, "Here's your car back." I have no idea what's wrong. I was like, that was fun." But yeah, I think it's back to that whole notion of we'll complain about things or say we can't. Sometimes the solution's right there. just walk it. I just that was the one, yeah, New Yorkers. I always thought they walked everywhere.
Yeah, I don't know who owns a car in Manhattan at this point. Like, why bother?
Yeah, I think how expensive it would be just to maintain the car,
Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine. I mean,
park
parking's
it.
so bad in Seattle. I can only imagine what it's like in New York.
Yeah, my parking in Seattle for work's $170 a month. I can't imagine what it'd be to have a, like, garage space or a car space in Manhattan to live there.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, there we go. There's a lot going on. There's other news we're not gonna talk about, but that's the fitness news I saw, that people were walking, not walking, being mad because they couldn't drive in. I guess I did see a clip of the news, and the woman on the news is it what's the Lincoln Tunnel? I was trying to remember. I was about to call it the Manhattan Tunnel. That's how well I know New York. They're like, "It must be working. The Lincoln Tunnel, like, is moving in the morning." So, maybe their initiative worked. Maybe they actually did encourage people to, stay off the road. I
Yeah.
was also watching a Super Friends episode from the 1970s that was talking about global warming.
Mm. Yeah, it's not a new concept as much as
Yeah.
people claim.
Oh, yeah. And even the Super Friends knew. Apparently, they didn't because they were tricked into causing global warming
Mm.
by the Legion of Doom. It can happen. Maybe we should review that episode sometime, but on Funny Book Forensics, not here. So I want to do a quick update. So we just wanted to go back and show you where I started. So we started the journey back on my birthday, weighed in at 211 pounds. And you see my body fat percentage was at 29.8. And one thing Paul and I are going to talk about again, because I keep bugging about, is this muscle mass issue. And you can see the basal metabolic rate is actually going to go down a little bit on my update. So we should mention that too. My body's trying to fight me now, Paul. I don't like all this weight loss. We're going to fight with you now. But I don't think we're going to be adjusting my calories because I'm consistently losing.
Yeah. You're on. Yeah, you plateaued through the holidays, which was good, and you're back on track going down. So
Yeah, and I actually did really well through the holidays. Yeah, I did have a couple of big meals, but I tried to average it throughout the week, like Paul suggested. If I had one big day, I tried to cut a little bit on other days. And that's also having that range, that 18 to 2200 range. It helps too because you can stay at the bottom of the range, right? If you have an off day of food.
yeah,
And I will say today, once I weighed in at 192.8, which was a loss, I think I edged a little tiny bit over my 2200 today. I think I got up to 2350, but all week I've been sitting around 1800. I had a couple extra tater tots tonight.
yeah, yeah, and that's not the worst thing, especially like having that range because it's exactly like you're talking about. Is not every single day is going to have the same level of activity, same level of stress, same level of cortisol, emotional response, all those things, all the the different hormones that are going in your body just aren't going to react the exact same way every single day.
Yep.
And your workout might not be as, like, on Wednesday, you cut it, I don't say you cut it short, but you're having trouble breathing because you didn't have your inhaler and we hit the bike.
Yeah.
And, today's workout probably expended more calories than that workout. And so it's okay to make a small adjustment.
One, the workout today was consistently higher, higher heart rates, but like what would not aerobic heart rate, but a workout. It's like in this, I was in like the third tier today, probably
Yeah.
most of the workout. Like not super high, but like that 125 to 130 beats per minute for a lot of the things we were doing today. Whereas a lot of the workouts, my heart rate's a little lower and it builds through the workout. You hit me right away with the heart rate today. So
Yeah.
throwing a bag around. But we can see the update all the way down from 211 to 192.8 weighing in today. Body fat below 26% now. We're at 25.7. The muscle mass went down again. So we've lost 4 pounds. So I've lost about 19 pounds, right? And four of that, according to the scale, is muscle mass. And then you can see the basal metabolic rate that is calculated by the scale is 1806. I might want to go back and do my own calculation. That's about 100 calories per day down. So that's just interesting. It's interesting how your body will fight that, right? It's
Yeah. And again, not to just reiterate the same things over and over again, but this is also based on whatever proprietary software that this very inexpensive, I don't want to say that it's cheap. It's not cheap, but it is not a high calibrated, extremely expensive piece of
Yeah.
technology. So the fidelity of the technology can, it is imperfect.
I will say though, when we started, the handwritten calculation for basal metabolic rate was very close to what we calculated there.
Yeah. And
But this one is actually closer because I think we calculated around 1800.
yeah. And physiologically, it makes sense that your body is going to lower the resting basal metabolic rate because it's starting to get not massive. Again, that's why we're doing this whole thing, is to show that it's not through massive calorie deficits, but you are in a deficit. Like, you have to be in a deficit to lose weight to a certain extent.
Yep.
And so your body's going to be giving you signals to say, hey, there's a little bit of scarcity going on that we're not used to, which doesn't happen as often in modern society, right? So you are going to get some physiological responses, necessarily be burning the same exact amount of calories as you're losing weight.
And I will say, I want to finish up. There is one figure on here because I haven't shown the chart that we've never mentioned. BMI. We're never going to talk about BMI, are we?
No,
Because it's a junk metric. It's hot garbage. Don't utilize it. Body
BMI,
fat percentage is
yeah,
far more
yeah,
important than BMI.
yeah, BMI is not going to, on a personal individual level, BMI is not going to give you much meaningful data.
And by the way, you all watch, when I get down to 15% body fat, it's still going to say that my BMI is either high or in the warning zone
Yeah.
because the way my body is shaped and my muscle mass. So it's just a little silly. Okay, so that's our quick update. But I did want to, Paul and I were going to talk about protein intake today because I keep having the question about muscle mass, and I may need to start paying attention to the protein a little bit tighter, but I want to get into the philosophy of protein. I also want to say intake. I also want to say before we started, and Paul and I talked about this very briefly before we started tonight. I want to stress you need to eat foods that are dense in vitamins and minerals as well. Your entire journey shouldn't just be how much protein can I get into my body. One of the foods we started talking about are egg whites. And if you I went to an article getting numbers, and it mentioned egg whites as a high source of protein. That is true. Egg whites are a high source of protein. You also will go bankrupt trying to utilize that protein source right now. If you try to buy it, I believe I looked at eggs today at the store and they were $26 for 5 dozen. So good luck with that. You can buy the egg whites in the carton, right? And mix them in. But I would put, and you may disagree with me, but I would put egg whites in the supplement category. I would say that egg whites are a protein supplement and I wouldn't utilize them as a pure food source. So if you were trying to get your protein up for the day, you might utilize something like egg whites. But that would be a supplement to the good, yummy whole food meals that you ate throughout the rest of the day. Because you're taking the part of the egg, which is the yolk that has all the vitamins and minerals in it out. That's why it's a supplement. You're
Yeah.
taking away part of that whole food. I don't know why I'm
So,
just off on egg whites today, but feel like I need to talk about it.
yeah, I have several thoughts on this. Number one, this stumbles into what I think has in, fitness and nutrition circles is an ongoing, uh, I don't like saying hot button issue. I mean, come on, it's not that hot button of an issue. It's eggs. But
It's
I
hot
think,
if you try to get them from the store.
yeah, I think,
You're probably at a felony class if you tried to shoplift eggs now. Like,
yeah,
no more misdemeanors for that. It's crazy.
yeah, it is. Thank you, avian bird flu. So there was some previous literature that people had touted about eggs, like egg consumption being correlated with increased cardiovascular instances. And as far as I can tell, that's been largely refuted because when you control for the manner in which people consume the eggs, so when people are eating those eggs, it was self-reported, self-reported as a large part of the SAD, right? The standard American diet, which is going to be incorporating eggs in ways that are in and of themselves in a hypercaloric state. But when you actually tease out the data and you look at when people are actually eating eggs that are, prepared separately and are part of what I would say balanced nutrition, if such a thing exists, then you actually see that people's cardiovascular instances tend to go down. And so I think that, the key there is like with everything is it's about moderation. My personal, what I would say my personal beef, you were asking me before the podcast, like you don't really remember a time in which, I was just eating egg whites. And there was a time when very early on when I did try doing just egg whites, and I would say from a psychological standpoint, the grit of having to eat just egg whites
Yeah.
is to me was psychologically not worth it. Like it's not sustainable, right? That's another thing that is like if you can just eat egg whites and you're happy, like you like egg whites and like one piece of sourdough toast, like if you can get 20 grams of protein in egg whites, then it's not intrinsically a supplement, but I personally, again, just from a personal preference, psychologically, it's not worth the value is not worth it to me. But I think your point is well taken is that the yolk does have some of the best, phytonutrients, some of the best vitamins and cholesterol. That's another hot button topic that it stumbles into. That's something that has been really hard for me to unpackage over the years. I would say that it's a terminology problem. So we have a problem with terminology when it comes to cholesterol in our food because cholesterol in our food definitionally is not synonymous with blood level cholesterol. And
Yeah.
that's something that I think is just inherently confusing. It was confusing to me forever until it was kind of unpackaged for me and explained to me um, that those two things don't mean the same thing, right? Like just because you're consuming a food high in cholesterol doesn't mean that your cholesterol per se goes up, right?
Yeah.
They are not like a one for one direct correlation. And I don't pretend to have the medical background to completely unpackage that. But I think that that's a fair representation of like why there's confusion that they're like, "Oh, you're eating cholesterol-rich foods. I have high cholesterol. I shouldn't eat those foods." But that's just kind of a false syllogism because they just don't mean the same thing. And
I would
so I think that cholesterol from eggs is actually good. And, your blood lipid levels, if you're getting them tested and you're losing weight and you're eating a bunch of eggs and they're still in a good range, I don't think you should have any concern about them.
I would also just add to what Paul is saying, variety is the spice of life here too. I am I would no way suggest eating the amount of eggs that he eats in Cool Hand Luke. That would not be the nobody that listens to this podcast is going to know that movie at all. It's
Yeah,
Paul
50
Newman.
eggs in a row.
It's one of the best movies ever made. Go watch it. Yeah. Yes, it'll leave you sad at the end. Spoiler. Go watch it. It's one of the best movies ever made as a critique of the prison system in the South and free labor. And yeah. But anyway, that all that aside, uh, and it's got one of the best quotes is what we've got here is a failure to communicate.
That
Yeah.
is where
And I
that comes from.
but you should I don't know why I'm saying you need to eat different things during the day too. Eat different meals. So you shouldn't be consuming like 14 eggs in a day necessarily. That probably would alleviate some of the danger too. Yeah, if you want to have a 5 egg breakfast to get a bunch of protein and into your diet and get those nutrients in, cool. If you want to eat a 3 egg breakfast, cool. But I wouldn't go and have 15 eggs for the day. Plus, again, you can't afford that anymore. And it is
Yeah.
cheaper to buy steak now.
Yeah. Well, and it's also going to be put in the context of like what your training goals are, right? Like I've listened to just podcasts where, Jay Cutler's talking about how many he's like eating, you know, 200 eggs in a week or whatever ridiculous amount. And it's like, yeah, if you're trying to be 280 pounds and be a world champion bodybuilder, like you're going to have to eat a lot of eggs and a lot of chicken and a lot of rice. But you want to be hitting those end ranges. The first thing you have to realize is that whatever you're seeing for recommended daily, allowances or whatever your RDA is grossly underrepresentative of what you should be taking as far as protein. I think we said this a little bit before, but I think I've heard it before and it's definitely true. The problem is it's not about making sure you're not eating other things, but it's also protein is the thing that you do have to give a little bit more attention to because you're just probably not eating as much as you think you are. It is, no one you can accidentally eat 1,000 grams of carbs. You know what I mean? Like you could just be like, oh, I'm gonna eat this bag of potato chips. And you're like, oh, I ate this whole, large bag of potato chips that has, a week's worth of carbs in it. Um, but you're not going to do that with protein. Like you're not going to unconsciously overeat protein because it tends to be more satiating. It's much harder. Like if you just sit down, like cook nothing else other than, and we do it often, right? Like cook, you know, 15 chicken legs. Um,
Yummy.
we don't eat all of them, right? We have more left over because it's very hard to just sit down and just cram down 15 chicken legs. Um, and that is one of the features of eating protein, particularly animal protein, is that it is very satiating, especially if that's the only thing that you eat. And they've done a lot of studies that show if you're mixing fats with carbs with protein, you actually will consume more. But if you just sat down and tried to eat straight protein, straight animal protein, all by itself, it's going to be very hard for you to overconsume that.
Yep. And I will also say too, we're gonna start in on some of the things you can do for protein. I do want to clarify one thing too. So when I'm saying supplement, like egg whites are a supplement for protein, supplement, I'm saying like egg whites, protein powders, beef bone broth, anything that you would consider an additive that would enhance the protein during the day. And I would definitely consider egg whites to be an additive for the reasons you just gave, right? The notion that you're losing the phytonutrients of the egg by just eating the egg whites. You are extracting a part of the thing out to get a specific goal out of it. Whereas if I eat a chicken breast, even though it's going to be low in fat, it's the lowest part of the chicken, or if I eat a chicken thigh, which is higher in fat, but tastes much better, and I'm more likely to eat it. The Because if I'm doing a chicken breast, I'm probably gonna add some sort of marinade to it to make it taste because I'm not a sadist, and I am not Jay Cutler, and I'm not trying to be a bodybuilder, right? We're not to the point on the diet where I'm trying to eliminate all fats or anything out of my diet at this point, but I do
Yeah.
wanna make sure that I get enough protein in. Before we get into the types of foods, I was reading, and this is what happens when you read on the internet, and you're going to tell me why I'm wrong. So, the internet says when you're cutting, like I am, if you want to maintain your muscle mass, you should be eating at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And I think, is it 2 grams per kilogram then?
Yeah, it's like 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram is what I would say the more modern literature would recommend.
Okay, so that'd be about a gram per body weight per pound, right?
Yeah. I've also heard it articulated this way by a lot of experts, which is you want to eat 1 gram. So as Americans, since we do things in pounds, 1 gram per pound of lean body mass that you're trying to accomplish. So for instance, if we are trying to reach your goal of 175 as a targeted body weight, and then at that, you're going to have, let's say, 150 pounds of lean body fat or lean muscle mass. And that's like where you want to be, right?
So let's go to the chart. Yeah. So we're saying I want more muscle mass than I have now. So I should eat to what I want. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you should be eating towards the desired goal. So let's say let's say that this is accurate, and I'm not saying that. Say it's 136, and let's say we want it to be, let's just go up 10 pounds. Let's say we want it to be 145. then you should be eating at least 145 grams of protein a day. And so let's put this in its true content, right? Or true context is, when we're thinking about like what is protein, protein is a sequence of amino acids, right? So amino acids help when they break down, they help you build and repair muscle tissue. So it's reparative. Okay. And what I have come to learn and what the science is telling us, and I don't have any hard and fast numbers. I don't know that we have that information or if there is a real expert out there who knows this information. But what I know is that as you get older, right? So this is abs at 50, not abs at 20. As you get older, your body becomes less capable of being as efficient, I guess, at converting that muscle protein synthesis. So you actually, for various reasons, environmental, health, breakdown of the gut lining, whatever it is, I'm sure that it's multifactorial as to why you get older, your body becomes less efficient. I think it's just whether it's, deactivation of sirtuin or whatever it is, whatever those processes are, as we get older, we're less efficient at synthesizing protein. And so you actually need to eat more, right? And I don't know what that adjustment looks like. Like all I have heard is you become less efficient. So, that recommendation might be given to people who are in their 20s or 30s. But as you become 50, 60, 70 years old, and you're still trying to do that same thing, it's going to have less and less of an effect. So you might have to be actually increasing even higher as years and decades go on based off of that. Again, this is like a general recommendation that you're trying to give to a populace. And, like what your protein synthesis is going to be is probably going to vary quite differently than, people who have had much other, who are framed differently, that have, more inherent muscle, that maybe they have higher levels or lower levels of testosterone. I'm sure that plays a factor. So there's a lot of things that go into it. So I would take that in consideration as well. As we get, this is the main point is, as you get older, you become less efficient at processing protein, which means you're probably going to have to eat more.
And there's other negative impacts of being less efficient at processing protein as well.
Okay. I don't know that's what I was getting at, but
I'll get to it. I think if you're doing abs at 50, wow, make sure you're prepared for the impact of more protein into your body
yeah.
and
Well,
that
and
diet adjustment.
make sure that you do like Dan did and sample all the different protein powders and see how
Oh
they
my god.
they react with your stomach.
We're gonna talk about supplements second, but I want to start talking about on foods first. Yeah, let's get into the foods. And I'm pulling up the gold standard that everybody says when you are trying to get protein. It's definitely not the gold standard for taste, but it's the gold standard that everybody seems to go to. Is the wonderful boneless, skinless chicken breast. We like to call that the zero flavor award. Tastes like crap. You have to be careful when you're buying it too. Actually, we're not careful. I just buy the cheap one, but you got to know that it's also just full of water.
Yep.
Oops, that I showed you the chicken thigh. I showed you the good thing. Let me flip there. The chicken breast. So 4 ounces, 120 calories, and you get 26 grams of protein. So if I needed 150 grams of protein and I'm eating 1,800 calories in a day, this is pretty nice, isn't it? 8 servings of this would be 200 grams of protein, over 200 grams of protein. So I need 6 servings. So I don't know why I said eight, but 6 servings would sit me at right about what, 720 calories, which means I have a whole bunch of calories left over to eat whatever I want the rest of the day. And I've got my protein done.
Yeah. Chicken and broccoli. It's tried and true. Not enjoyable, but it's tried and true. I did it for a
Yeah.
while.
Chicken, broccoli, maybe some rice there. Now, you are going to want some fiber. And trust me, you're going to want some fiber in your diet, unless you're trying to go keto. But we were talking, you don't want a real explosive situation. So you do definitely want some fiber in your diet. And that's where rice and grains and beans and broccoli, as Paul mentioned, like things like that come in. Though broccoli, I feel like does a number on your digestive system. It can be interesting.
Yeah. Supposedly, broccoli sprouts are supposed to be amazing for you. Like,
And we've done things too. Remember, we used to get the broccoli slaw,
yeah,
the big bags of that. I should get that actually. We haven't gotten that in a long time. That's not that bad for you. I don't even remember where we used to pick it up. Probably at something like a chef's store or something, right?
yeah,
But and not a chef. When I say chef store, we're talking like the bulk thing that's not Costco. That's free to go in, not something fancy. The second thing I pulled up is chicken thighs, and I believe these are skinless here. I do like to eat the skin and take a little bit more fat intake, so that adds a little bit of calorie. But as you can see here, if you'd like the fatty portion of the chicken, it goes up to 150 calories, so only 30 more calories. It drops in protein a little bit down to 19 grams of protein, but you could easily do, and this is the point about eat. We like to say you can eat anything, but not everything. Well, if you want to, if you're not trying to be Jay Cutler and you're not trying to be a bodybuilder and you would like your chicken to taste good and not be dry as a bone and not to, I know people say they cook chicken breast well. Have you met somebody that cooks chicken breast well yet?
yes,
They claim to. It
yeah,
tastes really good when you dump a half gallon of teriyaki sauce all over it.
yes, I do like chicken teriyaki.
But I like dark meat chicken teriyaki much better than white meat chicken teriyaki. You can always tell which teriyaki restaurant's authentic because you're going to get the dark meat chicken teriyaki instead of the white meat, unless you request it and you're some sort of sadist. But anyway, you can see the difference here. The reason I pull up the nutrition chart here is just to say, so for what if we did 6 servings, right? I said 6 servings over there, 6 servings over here. You're going to get an extra 180 calories a day. And I personally am going to this meal a hell of a lot better.
Yeah,
I don't know. You don't prefer you prefer white meat, I think, but also the chicken thighs are cheaper. Not the boneless, skinless ones, but if you're buying bone-in chicken thighs with the skin on and you throw them in a air fryer, that's a lot cheaper than buying chicken breast. You're usually $1 a pound cheaper or more. And so if you're on a budget or you're trying to get these meals in, you're like, man, I can't afford to go buy boneless, skinless chicken breast because they market it. Though they seem to market that down now. I wish they'd market the boneless chicken thighs down a little bit more, but that's fine. I can take the skin off if I want to. But skin is tastes good. It's really good if you cook it
Eh,
right.
yeah, and there's nutrients in the skin.
And it's back to eating the whole part of the animal too. That whole notion of you're getting the whole piece of something. I'm not saying I don't really care if people peel their skin off or not, but you're not getting a substantial change there. And if you get a little bit of fat, that's okay because you're still edging toward that thing. I did pull up a list of foods and I want to get Paul's reaction to the foods because I know you like some of these and don't. Now, I did think it was pretty lazy writing the article I looked at. They listed chicken breast as the number one food and then listed turkey breast as the number two food. And I was like, seriously, why don't you just say poultry as a category? So we're going to say poultry is a category. Yes, if you're eating the breast of poultry, you're going to get low fat, high protein meals for relatively low calories. Just full fact there. If you want to like yourself, though, you're going to get a turkey leg and you're going to put it in your air fryer and make it up. And then you're going to gnaw on it like it's an ice cream cone. Just walk around
Uh,
the house with it.
yeah, I'm gonna go on record and saying that I like turkey more than I like chicken.
I definitely like turkey more than I like chicken as well when you can find it. And I have walked around Disneyland with a turkey leg in my hand like an ice cream cone. I believe there are pictures somewhere. It's also if I can grab turkey or something out like that, if I'm in a situation like that, I always know I'm pretty safe as well. Yeah, I know it's a fried turkey breast and it's going to be more fat, and people will say, but our turkey leg. But fact of the matter is, if you're out in a situation where you can't get something and you can get turkey or you can get chicken, you're going to be pretty safe there, right? Even if you're getting seed oils or things like that on it, you're probably still going to be pretty safe. The article then starts getting into lots of seafood. There are some seafoods I just automatically deleted. I automatically deleted tilapia. Now, tilapia is an inexpensive fish that you can get low calorie, high protein from, but it's a junk fish that was created. Like, I'm not eating that shit. How about you? I
I
wanted
don't
your
like
I wanted your reaction.
yeah, I don't like fish. So
You don't like any fish. That's not true. You like halibut.
Yeah, when it's battered and deep fried, not particularly good for you
Mm, there's some halibut in there somewhere.
somewhere. Yeah.
Hey, you can eat it. I wouldn't eat battered deep fried halibut for every meal of the day, but if you wanted that once a week and it's helping you meet your protein goals, I see no reason why you couldn't have that, right?
Yes. Well, and I've actually been actively trying to eat. I'm not as averse as I used to be, but like I'll go to like Trader Joe's and they have like a nice little. Though they actually don't give you that much salmon, but they have a nice little like salmon salad that I'll get on occasion. That's another thing as far as like the supplements go is I have like very few tried and true supplements that I think are worth sticking to, but like fish oil is a really good one. Make sure that you're getting a high quality tap when you do it.
Especially if you're you and don't eat fish.
Right. That's what I mean. For sure.
And
Vegetable supplement.
here's one that I figured you would appreciate, though, that I think you do like. Shrimp is something we clearly don't eat enough of because 85 grams or 3 ounces of shrimp nets 19 grams of protein and only 101 calories.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I do like shrimp. If you can get high quality shrimp, there's some really low quality shrimp that they sell at some of the grocery stores.
Yeah. But we live next to the ocean. We can go down to the fish market and grab shrimp. That's clearly something I'm going to be thinking about. I'm learning in this podcast. I don't have enough shrimp in the house. That is definitely something I should be eating
We
more
don't
of.
eat shrimp regularly. This is true.
And I know you're not a tuna fan, but you are a sushi tuna fan, right?
Yeah, I
So raw
I
tuna.
despise canned tuna. Like
Yeah.
the smell of it makes me sick, but I do generally pretty well uh with most sushi.
And you don't like the smell of cooked salmon usually,
Not my favorite. No. I
but the
again,
taste is fine. You just don't like the smell.
yeah, I mean, it's gotten better over the years. I've had some really well done salmon that I will say that I have close to enjoyed. Like when I was younger, I really hated fish, but I it's not. It's just it's unfortunate because I know it can be so good for you, but it's not the mainstay of my diet.
Here's the thing too. I saw tuna and salmon on the list, and of course I like the whitefish. I like halibut and cod just fine as well. I know you don't as much. Of course, if they're deep fried and battered, that's even better. If you wanted to, though, I think if you're on a diet like I am and you're reading labels, just be careful about reading labels. But if you got the cod, you've gotten it before. The cod that was it's rolled in the bread as opposed to the deep fry batter,
Yeah,
and then you can drop that in an air fryer. Yeah, it's gonna taste good and
yeah,
you'll enjoy that. My problem is the slathering it in tartar sauce. I think that would probably be the more dangerous piece.
yeah. Same. I do like tartar sauce, and yeah, same. That's the thing is like, yeah, I feel like cod is like the least fishy taste of the fish, so that's probably why I like it.
Yeah, I prefer the halibut to the cod the same way, but yeah, it's that. Also, one thing you're thinking about too, if you're looking at these foods and you're out and let's say I'm at a grocery store and I'm out somewhere. Most grocery stores, I shouldn't say most, our grocery stores around here are inexpensive one, Winco and Whole Foods. So you go to each end of the line. Both have people right there making sushi and I can get a sashimi plate. So I don't eat avocado. It just makes me sick. It sucks. I love avocado. It's so delicious. I think that avocado is one of the most healthy, nutrient dense, wonderful things you can have on a diet. So go for it if you can eat it. I love avocado. I did an elimination diet eating at Mexican restaurants, eliminated avocado, and it turned out that had to be it. Like my stomach kept hurting after eating there, and that was it. And guacamole is one of the greatest things. So these are things I miss personally. Most of you can have it though. So sushi could be an option. Also, sashimi. If I'm at a grocery store and I need a quick bite and I don't have food with me, that's something that's easy for me to grab. I can grab a sashimi, right? Half tuna, half salmon, eat that. I know I'm getting the very healthy fish, high protein. The rice is going to give me some extra calories for the day. So some
Yeah,
carbs, but that's okay because I'm balancing that. And there are things that you can grab and go. So I that's one other thing with fish that I like is the fact that I can grab like sushi or a sashimi platter for me, and you could grab a sushi roll and you're gonna be okay ingesting that protein there.
yeah. And I know you said it, but it is important to emphasize that we are spoiled in the sense that I think that, we can trust that it's pretty high quality based on our geographical location. This is not something that every part of the country is something I'd recommend doing. Like if you're in a landlocked state, not recommending you go down to your local. Like the worst is when uh like gas stations have sushi or something. I would never ever consider eating that. But
Yeah, that's terrifying,
I
to me.
I
Yeah.
have I have tried the sushi at Winco, and it is acceptable. Almost good, I would say. The problem is that we have such really good sushi that you can get that, it's a
Yeah.
relative scale, but for like $15, same thing. Yeah, I want, I want to have a craving for sushi, want to hit my protein goals, and I don't want to spend, $60 at a high-end sushi restaurant, then that's the way to go.
Yeah, and I'm getting the sashimi, so I'm just getting the cut pieces of fish on rice for me. Obviously, and I'm gonna stress this, if I'm going to a high-end restaurant, the sashimi is going to be better.
Right.
But it's good. And other things, I wrote down a couple of other things. One, I did write down ribeye steak and a flat iron steak. Steak seems to be battered around. Beef seems to be battered around and left off a lot of these lists. I'm not really sure why. We get some stuff from Butcher Box. So Butcher Box has a flat iron steak, but you can get a flat iron steak anywhere. 3 ounces is 16.7 grams of protein and 129 calories. So you do take a drop from the you take a little bit of the drop from the chicken breast, which is 27 grams. So it's about a 9 gram drop. But I like steak and it's delicious. And you're still getting a pretty good bang for your buck there in your 3 ounces. A ribeye didn't drop the protein, just ups the fat a little bit. But you can still, you're not just linked to chicken and poultry and fish. I think that people get trapped into that too. Beef is actually good, and beef is going to have more iron in it, which is going to be good for you in other ways. And especially, and this is just what I know working with my mom, postmenopausal women need that iron.
Right.
And so don't abandon beef. And of course, if you don't eat meat, then there are whole different issues to work with here. But you can still do pretty well for yourself from a calorie standpoint. So I pulled up kidney beans, and for 3 ounces of kidney beans, it's 7.4 grams of protein and 108 calories and a lot more fiber. So now you're getting the fiber into your diet too. So if you're eating a lot of beans in the day, you're not having to eat another food to add to the fiber. So first few food, all the other foods we've listed, you're going to be wanting to eat something else, whether that's your broccoli or spinach or beans or rice or potatoes or something to add fiber into your diet. You can also take a fiber supplement, but we would recommend first attempt to eat the fiber from your whole foods into your diet before supplementing, and then go to the
Yeah.
supplements second.
Yeah. And I think that, that always brings in the discussion of speaking about beef. I talked earlier on the podcast about your body not being able to synthesize protein as well, but that also means that you're going to want things like chicken and beef, where the bioavailability of the protein is higher. I think there's enough objective data to conclude that meat, that animal based proteins are going to give you a higher concentration of the amino acids that you need to help build muscle, specifically leucine. That's something I always ask Zach, my wrestling coach, about. I'm like, where do you get your leucine from, dude? Like, I don't know what you're eating because, I can 100% with confidence tell you, is it possible to get extremely strong and not eat meat? Yes. Yes, it is. Boy, do I have a guy for right?
That's
But
the vegan legend, right?
yeah,
And
he's an
you
outlier though,
Instagram.
he's an outlier,
Yeah.
and he could probably subsist off of the tears of all of his battered foes and still be immensely strong.
And I did. Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Sorry. I didn't mean to cut
And
you
I
off
was just
there.
gonna say, so I think that, as time goes on, we'll probably get more data on this about, you know, what are the trade-offs for veganism in, say your 70s, right? Like if you're already struggling to get your protein and you're 70 years old, you have a lot of considerations because you probably are worried about your heart health. And so your doctor's probably like, hey, red meat, does have some correlatives. But it goes back to the confounding issues is that it's just like there's not a lot of people who are just eating the carnivore diet for 50 years at a time. It's hard to sustain, especially in our, plentiful and bountiful society. And same thing with veganism. You take veganism to an extreme, and there are lots of people that have very serious negative repercussions from that. And so it's going to be individual based on whatever your medical provider is telling you. And, if you can get the good news is things like, lab tests and personalized medicine, I think are going to get cheaper and cheaper. So you're going to be able to do a blood test and it's going to say, hey, you are deficient in these nutrients. And these are the animal slash plant proteins and foods you can eat to directly get those levels back up. And so I think that's going to change more and more as time goes on. But I just think that as a matter of fact, you're going to get more high quality protein for building muscle out of animal protein. And so you should factor that into whatever decision that you're making.
And I did go ahead and pull up some lentils so people could see the difference here on the nutrition facts. Paul's a big fan of lentils as a legume or a bean to eat and
Potassium and
see 12
folate.
grams of protein for one serving.
Yeah. And you brought it up earlier, right? So you're looking at, the just calorie for protein input, right? You were looking at 120 calories for more than double the protein, which is exactly the point, right? And so sometimes it's just hard. Like if you're only eating lentils, it's harder to get to that 100, whatever your number is, 175, 150 grams of protein. You're going to have 10 servings of, 6 cups of lentils to try to get there. That's a lot of lentils, man. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Like I like lentils, but that's a lot of lentil soup, a lot of lentils to be
And
eating.
that's also 1,400 of your calories, right, for the
Yeah.
day of your 18 to 2,200. But the good news, though, as you can see, you will get your iron taken care of for the day for the most part. You'll still get a lot of iron by doing lentils. So moving to that, you can also get, obviously, you're going to get a lot of dietary fiber in that as well. So again, that was one of the things I'm pointing out. If you're eating here, you don't have to supplement with additional fiber somewhere else. In my case, I probably should be eating some potatoes, something to get fiber, right? Potatoes, rice, legumes, something, broccoli to your point, like something else to get fiber. But if you're eating beans for the protein, you're eating the fiber at the same time. So the good news is if you're like, you can throw some carrots in there too, get a little bit more, but you can do a salad on the side or something like that to get you the nitrogen in your body you're always talking about and things like that, as opposed to just having the meat plus the beans plus this or the meat plus the potatoes plus this. A- And I also want to say too, potatoes have gotten a terrible rap. I don't know why. As I've been back on this journey, the more I look at potatoes versus rice, potatoes actually weigh out pretty darn well.
Yeah. Well, and here's one thing too that I would encourage people. Like you've been doing the kind of cut up, just like not like baked potato, like baking the cut up potato pieces. But there's also a lot of variety of potato, right? Like there's
Yeah.
a lot of, between just like away from the russet potatoes and, there's a lot of the golden potatoes. And I know that we can talk about, there's not a lot of proof in the blue zones and stuff and all of that, but it seems like a common thing that's eaten amongst a lot of like sanitarians in Asian countries and in some of the blue zones is like a purple potato, like this purple potato
Oh,
that
I
you
could
draw.
talk about this. I actually know about this. I did a whole speech on this my freshman year of college on potatoes, believe it or not. Yeah, I won't bore everybody. What I'm going to say is you have three basic potato types. You have a low starch, medium starch, and high starch potato. Your russet potato is a high starch potato. I
Yeah,
actually stay away from the russets. Your purple and your gold potatoes actually are in the same category. They're a medium starch potato. The purple ones are just cool because they are purple when you mash them, or gray if you put too much butter in. And then you've got your red potatoes, which are a lower starch potato. If you stay on the side, so I use the golden potatoes. I would use the purple. If the purple ones were there, I would grab them if they were cheap at the store. If they're at Winco, where I go to my cheap grocery store, I would grab the purple potatoes, but they have the bags, the yellow potatoes, the Yukon Gold, which is just fine. They mash the medium starch potatoes, still mash. They give you a lot of variety. It's a little bit more difficult to deal with the lower starch potatoes, the red ones. You have a little bit less variety and how you can cook them, but I can roast them, I can bake them, I can do everything with that golden potato I can do with a russet potato, but it's lower starch content and still getting the dietary fiber I need out of it. And I can do really great things with it. Yeah, you mentioned the cut up. It's super fast. Like you just take a thing of potatoes, put a little tiny bit of olive oil in a bowl or a bag, depending on how you want to shake it up. Put parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme in there, shake it up, cook it on 425 for like 20 minutes. You're gonna have these nice golden brown potatoes and they taste great. And you're gonna have and salt and pepper in there. You're gonna get a lot of great flavor out of that too. So there's a lot of things you can do with it. Rice is too. What I've found through this journey is rice, though I can eat so little of and actually hit my daily intakes. I can eat actually more potatoes than I can rice. That's 100 grams of rice, and that just lines the bottom of my dish, and that's it. And
Yeah.
so I was also realizing how much rice I was overeating before we started counting the macros when I would cook chicken and rice. Because I would
Yeah.
fill like a half of a glass container full of the rice and then throw the chicken on top. And now I'm weighing it out and it's, oh, that rice just fills the very bottom of the container. And then you're putting the chicken on top. And I was already doing it if we got takeout teriyaki. I'd only eat one of the they give you the 2 balls of rice, I'd only eat 1. That was pretty consistent for me. I knew better than that. But even looking at it at home, I was overeating the rice. So that was when where takeout was fine. I knew what to do there. You eat one of the 2 balls of rice, right? You don't eat both.
Yeah.
But when you can eat whatever you want because you're burning more calories than me, but I can only eat the 1 ball of rice. But you do it at home, now I'm a little bit more conscious too about how much I can overeat rice. Whereas potatoes, again, fill up my plate, a lot more of my plate, and I get to eat more.
Yeah. And going back to the different level of starches, right? And that plays right into, just kind of like one of the last notions I guess to think about is the, the glycemic index, which
Yeah.
I'm sure an expert could talk hours about the glycemic index. The principle is pretty simple is, certain foods that are calorically dense, that are carbohydrate dense, especially for certain people like myself. I'm pretty carbohydrate responsive. I seem to like if I start eating a lot of carbohydrates, it's much easier for me to gain body fat that way. So that's the primary way that I do it. And yeah, it's just about having your insulin levels spiking based on whether or not it's a monosaccharide, disaccharide. Is it something, is the level of starch, is it something that's going to cause your blood sugar to spike? That's one thing that I think categorically pretty much everyone can agree on is you would like to avoid massive spikes in blood sugar if at all possible. And so, eating the white russet potatoes or eating
Yeah.
two scoops of rice is going to spike that blood sugar more, which in limited instances isn't that big of a deal, but it's the chronic, it's the chronic activation of your insulin and blood sugar over and over again that I think it is very bad for you and can lead to type 2 diabetes. The other thing too, I think just this came to mind is, I mean, I think that's the thing that we have to remember is in America, we have chronic disease because of ongoing cycles of things that we're doing to our body. So, there's a strong back and forth that I've seen between experts in the field of longevity when it comes to, oh, well, if you eat red meat or high levels of protein, you're going to get, this thing called mTOR activation, right? Which is just like this pathway that's activated in the body. And I think the best explanation that I've heard on it is, you have to understand with a lot of responses in your body that acutely, meaning in a very short window, it can be very beneficial, right? So it's like if you take in a massive carbohydrate dump, it's good for your blood sugar to normalize itself, for your insulin levels to spike because it helps bring you back to a level of homeostasis. It's just when you do that over and over and over again, it becomes bad for you. Same thing with mTOR activation is like acutely, that actually is what's going to spur muscle growth and spur change in the body. But it's when it becomes a chronic activation, when it's, it's like turning a light switch on all the time, that has negative consequences. And so I think when you're eating, if you're worried, if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic, like, I forget what the number is right now. I think it's like, 40% of Americans are either pre-diabetic or diabetic at this point, which is an insane statistic to think about. And so if you're in that field, when you become, and this is, like for you, a lot of it's been the byproduct of just measuring it, right? Like measuring it is
Yep.
just giving you more information. And so, you know, doing the measuring, what did I say early on is like, if you can't measure it, you can't manipulate it. And so same thing with your own blood sugar levels, your own muscle growth, your own protein synthesis. If you're not measuring it, you don't know like what cycles your body are going through. And that's why, diabetics have to measure their blood sugar and they have to take insulin because their body has, deregulated itself over time. And so if you're doing early interventions through diet and exercise and lifestyle, you'll start being in tune with how your body should behave in those scenarios.
And then with that in mind, I think there are some traps people can fall into. And I wanted to get into protein supplementation really quickly before we end here, because there are some traps. And since you were mentioning this now, I'm going to start with the biggest trap. And I was going to go backwards and talk about the protein supplements, the best ones, but let's go backwards. Let's talk about the biggest traps. One of the biggest traps you can face when you are a novice eater in this way is eating protein bars. And if you're not careful about which protein bars you're buying, and most of the time that you go grab one, you better just know you're eating a candy bar
Yeah.
with extra protein in it. And I'm going to show you what I ate today. Now, I made a conscious choice to do this because I threw a couple of these in my desk from the store because they were a better option than what I had available. But I know what I'm getting into with this. And plus, sometimes I want a candy bar, right? And I'd rather have this than a candy bar. But Paul's going to tell you why this was a terrible choice today. So I had a builder bar today.
Mm. Well, number one, Builder bars suck. I don't like Builder bars.
Oh,
But
I actually like the way they taste, but
that's here. 9 grams of fat. So we have 6 grams of saturated fat. It's a lot of saturated fat. 3 grams of dietary fiber, 17 grams of sugar, and it's all added sugar. 100% of the grams of sugar,
are all
33.
added. Yep.
Yeah, 33% for 20 grams of protein. And really, the sugar is just to make it more palatable. That is one thing that if anyone was eating protein bars 20 years ago, will tell you is they were atrocious. They were just so bad. There are a lot better ones today, but yeah, right to this point, I mean, at least here you are getting the 20 grams. I've seen ones with macros like this where you're still only getting maybe 10 or 12 grams, and those probably just aren't worth it. You want to be getting like 15 to 20 grams. It's probably the last thing that I talk on is this is something that I've been struggling with based on like how I manage my weight. Cause usually I manage my weight just through a lot of intermittent fasting. That works well for me. But I've been trying to focus on getting stronger and getting my muscle mass where I want it to be. And it seems that the best way to maximize protein muscle synthesis is to have like 4 meals that have 40 grams of protein in them, which is just really hard for me to do throughout the
Yep.
course of a day, the way my life is structured. So I struggle with that. And so protein bars can be a way to supplement that. But I think you want to pick one. Number one, that it does taste good. So there are tons of options. I like the Crunch Bar, the Irving Crunch Bars or whatever. Those are like my favorite ones. Their macros aren't perfect, but they're pretty good. They're pretty well designed and they do taste really good. So you're getting like 20 grams of protein there, and then you want to have something else that you're taking with that protein. But I think you want to try to, I guess the main point there is that you're not going to get the most for your efficiency if you're just sitting down eating 120 grams of protein in one meal. Like it's just not going to give you the maximum output as if you were breaking it up into 4 meals. And so for a lot of people doing a supplement like a protein bar is going to be the way to accomplish that, and that's totally fine. I do it all the time. I would just say there's a lot of, this is where the food industry gets into it, right? There's a lot of like, I don't want to get too much into it, but just like Kmart brand things that say that they're protein bars that really are what you're talking about is like a glorified candy bar. And then there are some that it's like, okay, again, you have to look at the macronutrient content and say, all right, is this number one, does it taste good enough for me to actually eat it and feel good? Okay, great. Now, are the calories that I'm taking in worth it in the conversation that we've been having about hitting those macronutrient goals of, if I eat this, then I can't have as much, potatoes later, or I can't have, or,
Yep.
I have to eat more of the plain chicken breast that I don't like to hit my macronutrients. And so I think that, don't just, there's so much choice and variety, like do a little bit of research and just stick
Yep.
to the ones that you like and just have them, or, buy them in bulk, have them around. Um, you were talking about, the egg goop ones that you don't really like. And I like
Yeah.
them just because of their simple ingredient lists. That's really the main reason that I like them. But yeah, they're macronutrients. Like you're not getting 20 grams of protein; they're usually 12. So
Yeah. Let's try something else too. So I'm going to present an alternative to a protein bar, which is the Oikos Triple Zero yogurt. So let's do a quick comparison here. And by the way, before I get into Oikos too, I did think it was funny. Cliff Bar makes the Builder bars. And
yeah,
Cliff Bar is one of the things that was marketed as a protein supplement, but was really built as a hiking and climbing supplement originally. So it was supposed
right.
to be higher in carbs and not higher in protein, but then it got mass marketed as a protein. And then they had to build, no pun intended, a different product to market toward protein, which toward bodybuilders, which is funny. Now we have, let's say you were grabbing a snack and you had a fridge around. Obviously, there's a caveat for that, but I could have grabbed a yogurt this morning from our fridge and brought it to work with me instead of eating that Cliff Bar or that Builder Bar. So the Builder Bar was 270 calories, and this is 100 calories.
Yeah,
And the Builder Bar had, we'll go back to that, it was 20 grams of protein. And this container of yogurt had 100 or has 10 grams of protein, or sorry, 15 grams of protein. 3 grams of dietary fiber versus the dietary fiber over here, 3 grams, so exactly the same,
yeah, and a third of the sugar.
and no added sugar. So it's to
Yeah,
whatever fruit was in the packaging, right?
yeah,
So
or the milk, the non-fat milk, whatever milk sugars are left over.
yep. And if you're looking at supplement options here to your day, the yogurt's
Yeah,
probably a substantially better supplement option than the protein bar.
yeah. Yogurt is one of the best things you can do. Like it's just it's not my favorite, but I have done it in in cases of break glass in case of emergency where I really want something sweet. Like I'll literally just
Yep.
take one of the Greek yogurts and just put some protein powder in it and just whip it a ton. And you've seen me. It's not great, but it like it just maximizes everything that you need. And, going back to the creamy thing that you bought when we did with that orange protein. It does have, more sugar in it than I would like, but just as like the Greek yogurt, freezing it and putting it in the creamy, like it's really good. You really get, it satiates you, gives you the texture of it being like an ice cream. Like it's pretty good for very little work. Just
Yeah, we're
waiting
talking
and
about
wait
the
to
Ninja
freeze.
Creamy and the frozen yogurt you can make in there. A lot of people buy the Ninja Creamies and put soft serve and stuff in there. We would not recommend that. The whole point of buying that was to get ice cream that wasn't quite ice cream, but that served our macros, which it did.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to talk about, because we've been on a bit, is protein powders. And I didn't bring up a bunch of pictures for protein powders, but I just want to talk through them a little bit and some of the options. Um, so a couple of the options with the protein powders, we've discovered once again that I don't deal well with whey or casein protein powder, just anything that comes from cow milk protein powders. How long ago was that study I read? That's got to be 12 or 13 years ago now. with the bobsled coach, and the coach of the American bobsled team didn't have any, straight metrics, but said based on the athletes the person had worked with, right, over time, about 20% of those athletes just did not have a tolerance for whey protein products, whether it was refined casein protein or it's just straight up whey protein. We would both recommend that if you're gonna use a protein supplement that is whey based, to get the casein protein, correct? Or do they need
Um,
to? Or are they fine either way?
so the so I'm gonna leave this one in the strict it depends when
Okay.
you're taking it. Okay. So I recommend, and I did this for a long time. I haven't been taking casein protein as much. Maybe I should start doing that. We still have some in the house. Yeah, I just don't like that flavor that much. It's like the chocolate one. It's just not my favorite. But in any event, um, whey protein. So whey protein isolate, if you are taking it, there's all the talk about the metabolic windows, which I think is not the biggest thing, but I do think that if you have just a blaster of a workout, like you just super hypertrophy, like you're doing super high volume, whatever it is, chest and biceps, whatever the show muscles are, and you've just really put strain in the muscles, taking away protein immediately after working out is going to give you that maximum benefit. Casein protein is slower to digest. And so it goes back to the exact conversation I was having before about like, what do you want to do with your blood sugar? Like, if you're
Yeah.
going to take a protein supplement at night, let's say relatively close to bedtime, casein protein is probably just health conscious wise has a slight edge. And just on balance, you would probably want to just, defer to that as being probably better for you for slower digestion because your digestive tract, you want it to slow down when you're trying to go to sleep, and it's going to be slower when you sleep. And so I know a lot of people and bodybuilders and stuff, really do the casein protein at night. Um, I'm a big fan of like the Naked protein brand and the Naked supplements. That's one of the ones that I like just personally. But there's, again, it's another one where there's a million in one. Check the macros. You bought that chocolate chip one, which is not bad. I like that. And the macros aren't terrible. And
Yeah.
obviously,
That was the Ghost Chips Ahoy one.
yeah.
And
And then,
that was one where we thought, is it something like that's a craving one, right? Instead of having something else, we're gonna have that because our roommate said, "Oh, Ghost, it's a trash product." And I'm like, yes, compared to Naked and the products you're describing, yes. But if it's a protein supplement that you'll have as a sweet instead of going and having a cookie
yeah,
or
it's
going and
preferable.
having ice cream, we'd rather have you have that, right? So it's
Yeah.
one of those things you just keep around. The other two pieces I want to share, this is one where I was mad at Paul because I'm trying to choke down the whey protein, and Paul had goat milk protein in the house, and I didn't even know. And I tried it, and I was like, "Oh wow, my stomach is not on fire and not dying." And apparently, it's quite expensive. I don't know how expensive yet because I haven't bought my own first bag yet.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you.
but it's and there's a couple varieties of it, but you're looking at 120 calories for 2 scoops of the protein, and you get 22 grams of protein in that. Great. That compares to all the other things we were listing down there, like the turkey breast was 140 calories and 27 grams of protein. So if you need a supplement in addition to your meals, the protein powder is something that can definitely work. And now I used to take beef isolate protein as an alternative to doing the whey protein as well. And I still have half a thing of beef isolate protein up there because it just doesn't taste very good. It's like the chocolate one and it doesn't taste great. You don't like it. I know that's why it just sits there. And I abandoned this because Dylan, my old trainer, turned me on to beef bone broth, the powdered kind. And I just get the bulk supplements brand of the beef bone broth, like the super cheap beef bone broth that you put in water, and it is crazy awesome. You get 20 grams of protein for 80 calories.
Yeah.
And
And it,
one of the
you know, it
things,
tastes decent.
and it tastes decent. It has no flavors. You can add salt to it. You could add turmeric to it. You could add pepper to it. One of the things I do with it though is I will make a high protein like beef stew or a high protein any sort of soup, and I will use the beef bone broth in it instead of the store-bought broth or in combination with. I'll maybe get like one thing of chicken stock. Always get stock just as a rule as a cook. Get the stock or the bone broth, right? Get that. But get a thing of chicken stock, and then the second half of the liquid will be the bone broth. And you throw that in there. And we came up with a crazy stew recipe that gets me a ridiculous amount of protein. And you have to eat like 600, was it like 630 grams or something like that, is under 500 calories. And you're getting
Yeah,
like 44 grams of protein. And
it
that's
was
vegetables and everything in there too. And so you can use that. So that's one of those things I like it because it's a supplement I can eat at the side, but it's also an additive. And we didn't even get into food additives yet. But that beef bone broth is a nice food additive. So if I'm making anything with liquid in it, I can add it to that liquid and I'm going to automatically add protein. And the bone, it's fairly flavorless. You add flavor to it, right? There's a little bit of flavor to it, but it's not extremely flavorful. So you can utilize it without changing the flavor makeup of your dish.
yeah.
Of course, if I'm making beef stew, it's really easy because I'm totally fine with that, obviously. Yeah, so that's my talk on supplements and Paul's talk on supplements. You have anything to add about the sups?
As always, take your creatine.
Oh
And
yeah, be strong.
oh, yeah,
Take your creatine.
creatine
I was just
has lots of cognitive benefits, lots of muscle repair benefits. It's going to give you increased endurance. Unless you just have some kind of like visceral reaction to it, there's no reason you shouldn't be taking creatine all the time.
And by the way, I just pulled up the macros on my homemade beef stew in the Instant Pot. It is you have to eat 676 grams, which
Yeah,
is
that's what I
a
thought.
lot. 463 calories, 14 grams, 15 grams of fat, 31 grams of carbs, and 49 grams of protein.
Yeah,
So if you ate that 3 times in the day, I would be under 1,500 calories and at 150 grams of protein. You can, and nothing else. And I get all my fiber in there too.
got to eat the proteins.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you use creatine if you're tolerant to it? And I like to mix it in anything that tastes not like creatine.
Yeah,
Some people like to put it in fruit juice. Some folks will put it in different things. I have added it to anything from a diet strawberry limeade from Sonic. I've added it to what I'm probably adding things Paul would say not to add it to. I add it to the ice drinks, like just whatever I can do to choke it down. I will add it to it.
I add it to my beet juice.
Well, I do have my beet juice extract electrolytes. I will add a scoop of that in there too. So do that. All right. Hopefully you learned something today. I know we were throwing a ton of information at you, but we want to give you a glimpse of what it's like on the journey. And I actually learned a couple of things doing the research. One was the shrimp we mentioned. So I'm excited about that. I may be going down to the waterfront and grabbing some shrimp to add to the old diet. So that's really nice. I think we could do like a fish stew or something like that too, like a shrimp stew. Paul's and make the house
Yeah,
smell really good for you.
I am Creole.
So that would be okay. Also, just thinking about it, we just a summary. We also mentioned the amount of protein you need. So we're looking at about a pound of protein per, not body weight,
Gram, not
or
pound.
sorry, a pound of protein. Wow, that would be that
No,
you'd
yeah,
be dead. A gram of protein per pound of muscle mass that you want to maintain. And then the last piece is thinking about supplements versus the thing. Please eat the whole food first, eat the thing, and then go for the supplements as an addition to when you're trying to add to things at the end of the day or in the middle of the day, wherever that is, or if you're on the go, like Paul said. But don't make the supplement the thing. Don't eat the egg white, eat the egg. Don't eat the chicken. It's okay to have chicken skin once in a while. You don't always have to throw it away. It tastes yummy and you can eat that whole thing. And make sure you're eating balanced meals. We're not just going for protein here. You're looking at making sure there are vegetables and fruit around, and eat whole foods, right? Don't just eat processed crap. Like the whole point of this is not to take you from eating whole foods to count protein as quickly as possible, eating processed things. We actually want you to eat food. So we will have an episode at some point about cooking and some basics of cooking, but that'll be for another time. So, Paul, you have anything you want to plug as we get on out of here? I'll plug it for him. You can train with Paul at Certified Jiu-Jitsu on Jackson slash Bridgeport Way and 27th in University Place slash Tacoma, Washington. Do you see all those slashes there? There are a ton of slashes. So you can go see all the cool drawings in his gym and you can train with Paul too. Also, I have another podcast called Funny Book Forensics I do with Greg Smith. And someday we're getting Greg on this journey. He had a little health issue, a very minor one. So he couldn't jump on the journey yet. But Paul, I think it's your job to make sure Greg shows up.
All right, you got it.
So we'll get Greg on this journey too. And if you want to join us along in the journey, it's always nice. You can follow us on, we are up on YouTube. We're going to have shorts. We have some shorts up already on TikTok and YouTube as well. And then you can listen to the podcast anywhere that you get a podcast. We are registered with the podcast pretty much everywhere. We also are posting on Facebook, Instagram, X, and Blue Sky. Blue skies are smiling at us. So we're everywhere. And give us a or subscribe, depending on how it works. A like on the other places. Follow us on Facebook, whatever. That way you can get the most up to date information and we know you're out there. And finally, I will just add now, we've done a few of these. If you have a topic you'd like Paul and I to cover, send us a note and we'll do our best job to cover that for you. If you have a success story, share it with us. We'll read it right on the podcast. So let us know how you're doing on your journey and keep joining us on my journey to abs at 50. Thanks, everyone. Dan, hit the button.